Oh my gosh, I overdosed on heroin yesterday and I didn't die. So, again, please know there is sin in my heart and I am not perfect. I am living in my car. We want our cake and we want to eat it too. We want to live in sin and we also want to be saved. Hello, welcome back if you're already subscribed. So you clicked on this video, I'm assuming because you want to hear my story / testimony. I have a delicious mocktail here, one of my faves. So let's go ahead and get started. I also want to start off by saying that I am a Christian, but know that there is sin in my heart, okay? I am not perfect. I'm just a broken soul who had an encounter with the Holy Spirit and it changed my life. So again, please know there is sin in my heart and I am not perfect. All right, so with that being said, my name is Christina. I am 39 years old, almost 40. I am originally from a very small town in Ohio. However, I currently reside on the beautiful coast of North Carolina. So my parents are divorced. They got divorced when I was a baby. And quite frankly, that was the best thing that could have happened to them. My parents just do not belong together. They're like oil and vinegar. You know what I'm saying? I'm also going to say that I love my parents. I have the most respect for them. But I am going to be telling the truth in this testimony. So my parents both had a very tough upbringing. And they both became parents very young. And so when that happens, sometimes you don't make the best choices. And so a lot of people would say when I was growing up that I was very mature for my age, when in reality, I was just exposed to way too much, way too young. Both of my parents are addicts. And what that means is I was in charge of taking care of my brothers and sisters for most of their young lives and most of my young life. I can remember being 10 years old and literally bathing and feeding my little brother, my little sisters. It was hard and it was a lot to put on a very small child. And I was forced to grow up and be responsible at a very, very young age. And I think if I'm being even more transparent, from the age of 8 years old, second grade, I got myself up for school. I set my own alarm. I made my own breakfast. I walked myself to the bus stop and got myself off to school from the age of 8 years old until I graduated from high school. Now, entering into middle school, like a lot of other kids, I just wanted to fit in. My entire life, I've always felt different. I've always been treated different, and I've always been kind of left out. And so during that time, because I wanted to fit in, I made some not good friends and some not good choices, which also led to me being brutally bullied. And it was really hard because, I had problems at home and I had problems at school. So no matter where I went and no matter what was going on, I was always in a situation where I felt anxiety, where I felt maybe unsafe, and I just felt constantly on the defense. I also went through a very serious ugly duckling phase, and so no boys wanted to date me. There was a time when I had no friends because I was too ugly, because I was too poor. I grew up in a trailer park. My family was the definition of, poor white trash, for lack of better terms. There was times where there just wasn't enough money. There was times when there wasn't enough food. And that's the reality of not only my situation, but millions of other people as well. At the age of 13, it was actually the day before my 14th birthday, I was kicked out of my house because I was a quote unquote bad kid. And I was sent to live with one of my aunts in southern Ohio, where I finished 8th grade. I lived there for almost 6 months, and it was a very difficult time for me. I was already going through so much, and I was going through so much because of my parents and because of my school. And at that time, I felt just so abandoned. And I felt very lonely, but I also got to spend a lot of time with my cousins, and my girl cousins. And so they showed me a lot of like girly things, like how to do makeup, how to do my hair. I got my first layered haircut from my cousin Nikki. Shout out to you, Nikki, if you ever see this. So I got to move back in with my mom and my stepdad and my sister right before I started high school. And it was under the stipulation that I would literally have to be an angel. There would be no more skipping school, no more drinking and smoking pot and smoking cigarettes and skipping and fighting and all the things that I was doing. Okay, I had to literally be a perfect child. And I also had to take up a sport. I could pick the sport, but I had to be in a sport, and I picked soccer. And so I did soccer my freshman year. And at the time, I really did not want to do it. I did not know anybody. I'm sorry. I keep bumping my camera, and I'm so sorry. Or bumping my microphone. I'm so sorry. I talk with my hands, if you haven't figured that out yet. So yeah, I was forced into playing soccer, but I met some friends. And so before the school year even started, I already knew some people. And I snagged me a boyfriend. But let me be honest. This was the country, okay? Before my high school was in the country. Like, people would actually drive tractors to school, okay? And so I didn't know until after we started dating, but my boyfriend was the local pig farmer's son. So imagine all the fun jokes that came at my expense from that. So from the 8th grade until sophomore year, I just kind of blossomed into more of a girly girl. I kind of grew out of the ugly duckling phase, and I started dating somebody in high school who was semi-popular. And this may seem kind of insignificant now, but this is a very important factor in my story. Started dating this person, and this was my first everything. First love, first, if you know what I'm saying. I mean, first, I had never even really kissed a boy seriously until I started dating this person. And I don't say this person's name on purpose, and we will get to that later on. So fast forward to the ending of school, me and this person break up. My heart is shattered. Now remember, I am already a broken soul. My parents are divorced. My real father is really not in the picture, and he really has nothing to do with me. So I already have daddy issues, and I'm looking for love in all the wrong places. So I graduate from high school, and when this happens, I really kind of blossom, not into a woman, but like I really become comfortable in my skin, and I start getting noticed by the opposite sex a lot. And I started getting all this attention from men, and I just wasn't used to it. Like I said, I really didn't date that much. And so it was intoxicating at first. It was amazing that all of these men wanted to talk to me, hang out with me. And so I became very promiscuous. I don't know if this is a bad word or not, but I was a slut. For lack of better terms, I was a slut for a very long time. And I just was very despicable. When I didn't care if you had a boyfriend. I didn't care if I wanted your man. And it's so hard even to say that out loud, because I was just such a terrible person and didn't even realize it, which made me even more of a terrible person. It was just such a hard time in my life, and I was going through such a transition from a child to a woman. And, you know, during this time, my parents are still having their problems. My senior year of high school, my mom took off, and like we found her in a different state. And so it was just such a hard time, and I was so alone. I was so unprepared for being an adult. And again, I didn't even realize how unprepared I really was. I was engaging in very dangerous activities. I was hanging out with dangerous people, and I loved it. I loved the adrenaline of it. all of my boyfriends were drug dealers that I dated at that time. They all were drug dealers. And if they were drug dealers, usually that meant that they had also been in jail or prison. Most of them were on parole. And again, I thought that this was so cool. I thought that, you know, I went out to this local bar that I used to go to all the time. And I met this older guy. He was about 9 years older than me. And we hit it off and started dating, very serious, very quickly. Well, it's important to know that at this time, I had also met my now husband. And we had dated, and he broke my heart, honey. I mean, broke it. And so right after this happens, within days, I meet this other person at the bar, and we start hanging out. Pivotal moment. I meet this person, and Matt, my husband now, calls me, and he wants to reconcile. And because I'm stubborn and a little bitch, I don't do it. And I'm mean to him, and I blow him off, and whatever. And so I continue to date this person who turns out is smoking crack. He's a literal crackhead. I'm 19 years old. I don't know anything about crack. I don't know. I had no idea this was even going on. And so we entered into a very, very weird relationship, and it turned abusive. And there was things that happened in that relationship that were just awful. And I suffered a tremendous amount of trauma in that relationship. That was a very pivotal moment in my dating life. And so when that ended abruptly, I was grief-stricken, I was broken, and I just immediately sought comfort in more men. And my behavior became more destructive. I started drinking a lot. A lot. And I entered into another relationship with somebody that I actually had dated in middle school. My only boyfriend. Anyways, we actually had rekindled, and this is where we got our first apartment, and it became a local party spot. Now, this is the person who introduced me to hard drugs initially. And we're going to call him Schmo. Me and Schmo, we were starting to do a lot of cocaine together, a lot of cocaine. Weekends were filled with copious amounts of cocaine, and we were mixing those with all kinds of stuff, benzos, opiates, alcohol. Our apartment literally became the local drug hangout, the local spot. And so it just was constant chaos. And I did forget to mention that I did go to cosmetology school at the age of 18. I got my cosmetology license when I was 19. And so at this time, I'm 19 years old. I had just gotten my cosmetology license. I had just started my career and was a full-blown alcoholic drug addict. Okay. And so all of my money went to, our drug habit and rent. Schmo worked for his uncle, and he would work sometimes and not work. And it was just, like I said, it was chaos, absolute chaos. One night, me and Schmo got into a big fight. There was a guy who was actually coming to my work. He was stalking me. It was getting very serious. I mean, he was literally stalking me. He was coming up there whenever we would close. He was hanging out. He was calling all the time. He was coming in. It was very scary. And instead of him stepping up and being a man and addressing the issue, he blamed me for it. And I was drinking, and we got into a really big fight, and I left and ended up crashing my car. And I just left. I fled the scene. Flagged down some stranger. Yeah, flagged down a stranger. Hitchhiked back to my apartment. Now, mind you, I am blackout drunk whenever this happened, okay? Blackout drunk. Long story short, the sheriff's department shows up at my house, and I was 20 years old at the time, and I got a DUI, fleeing the scene, reckless operation. I mean, I had a slew of charges. And so I went on probation. I had to do drug and alcohol classes. Well, Schmo had been in the system. He knew the system. And so I had drug and alcohol classes that I was supposed to be taking drug tests for, and I was faking my drug test. I was not taking any of it serious. I was just literally going through the motions. I would go to the AA meetings that they would force me to go down the street to the local drive-thru, grab me a case of beer, go home, and get blackout drunk. Like, I took none of it serious. So fast forward to, this is just a continuous cycle of drug and alcohol use, abusive relationships, just jumping from one chaotic situation. So I end up moving in with my mom. I broke up with this person and moved in with my mom very briefly, and then got into another relationship with somebody who was 10 years older than me. And this turned into a severely mentally abusive relationship. And I was in this relationship for almost 2 years. And as fate would have it, one day I am at work and we're about to close. And this guy comes in, and he had never been there before. And when he signed in, I recognized his last name. And I asked him if he had a brother. And he did. And it turns out I had dated his brother, and his brother was my big papa. And so I was actually due to go on vacation. I wasn't even doing anything fun. I was going to stay at some hotel and party for a weekend. So I was going to be out of work for a few days. When I got back to work, it turns out that Matt had called every single day looking for me, and we ended up we dated. We started dating. And remember, Matt had dated me before when I was a baby. I was literally 18 years old. I was just graduating cosmetology school. And so I was a different person when him and I got back together. I was a heavy drinker. And he didn't know, but I was also a very heavy drug user at the time. My husband, it's very important to note, he's never done drugs, ever. He's never even smoked weed. Like, he's smoked a cigarette once, and he's drank. He has a young son. When we dated the very first time, Cameron was 2, and when we got back together this time, he was 6. And so Matt quickly realized that my lifestyle was not meshing with his lifestyle. And, he told me, like, listen, either you get your stuff together and get cleaned up, or we can't be together. And so I tried. I tried so hard. Oh my gosh. For like 6 years, 8 years, I was trying. I had went into detox, I think like 3 or 4 times, because I just kept falling off the wagon. And I could not get it right. I was also going to therapy at the time, but I was really using my therapist just to get pills. I was really bad into Xanax and Klonopin. And so when you're getting those prescribed to you, it's really easy to argue with people. I'm prescribed. And so, yeah, I was just zannied out. Here's where things are going to get hard. I am going to be talking about my infertility. Now, it's important to note that when you're young and you're poor and you are around chaos and crazy, you don't really picture a lot for your future. And so I really just wanted to be a mom. Like, that was like my ultimate goal growing up. I wanted to be a mom, but not just any mom. I wanted to be a good mom. I wanted to be stable and caring and loving. And I wanted to read my kids' storybooks before they went to bed, and I wanted to do their hair with them, and I wanted to help them pick out their school clothes, and I wanted to walk them to the bus stop and get up with them in the morning and make them breakfast. Just all the things that I did not get. And I don't want to say that my childhood was full of terribleness, because there was moments where there was happiness, but it was hard. And so when me and Matt got back together, I started having a lot of female issues, and I was going to a doctor who turned out to be literally a quack. I don't know how else to say it nicely. Um, this doctor started feeding me Percocets like they were candy. And her response to Matt when he would be worried, oh, she needs this medication, she's in pain, da, 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 da. So now I'm getting prescribed the big stuff, and I quickly get very addicted. And I very distinctly remember the very first time that I went through withdrawal. I was going every week and I was picking up a prescription from my doctor, and I went this one day and there was some kind of problem and I had to call the doctor and they had to call the pharmacy. Well, by the time I had got there, it hadn't gone through the system yet. They were making a change to the prescription, and so the pharmacist was like, it's not ready. You can't get it yet. And I remember that day I wasn't really feeling good. Like I was like kind of hot, kind of cold. I just kind of felt a little achy. It just felt weird. And so I left the pharmacy and I wasn't feeling good. I called the doctor's office back and I was like, hey, there's an issue, blah, blah, blah. They said, we're going to call, whatever. I go home. They call me a little bit later and they said, hey, your prescription's ready. You can go pick it up. I go and pick it up. And I wanted my Percocets to kick in fast. So I would literally start chomping them down in my mouth, and then I would swoosh whatever drink I had, probably like orange juice or something, or juice. Tasted awful, but they would kick in within 10 minutes. And so I did this, and within 10 minutes, all those symptoms that I had were gone. And I was like, I'm addicted to these. My body. And of course, I don't tell anybody, you know, and so this cycle just continues on for some years. And my issues just keep getting worse. I keep having to have surgery after surgery. And I had to have a fallopian tube removed here, an ovary removed there. And ultimately, I ended up having to have a complete hysterectomy. And before that, I found out that I would never be able to conceive on my own. I still had an ovary, so I still had eggs. So if I could find a surrogate mother, you know, Matt and I could still have a child on our own. But Matt was just completely against the idea. And I just, at the time, I was upset at the time, but it's like there was just so much going on and so much to process. You know what I mean? We were both going through our own things in our own way. And so I find out that I will never be able to have children. And that was soul crushing to me. Soul crushing. I mean, I thought I was so angry with God. I was enraged. Because in my mind, I didn't ask you for much. I didn't ask to be rich or famous or anything. I asked you to be a mother. And so when that happened, I was on a war path. A war path. I really, really at that time thought that God was punishing me for choices and decisions that I had made. I really believed that in my heart. I really believed the enemy when he, whispered that in my ear, that I had deserved this. And so that just fueled me even more. And on top of all of that, I hated my body even more. Like I felt betrayed. Whose body is this? And so I'm not going to be good to this body. I was not going to be good to this body. And so another pivotal moment happened. And that first boyfriend of mine who could not stay out of prison, Matt and I had broke up shortly after my hysterectomy. There was just so much hurt and we just didn't handle it well. We were young, we were immature, and so we broke up. And when this first boyfriend pops back into my life, the first, I think this is maybe God's really doing something for me. Maybe he's really gonna come through for me this time. And so we start dating. And I quickly realized that this is a situation that is really out of my control. This person was in and out of prison for heroin. And in the beginning of our relationship, I kind of tried to do what Matt did for me. And, you know, there was a time, so many times, that Matt was like, let me show you a better life. Let me show you what you could have. Let me show you nice things and whatever. And so I tried that with him. You know, I tried, okay, let's see if, you know, if I show him a different way, maybe it'll click. I swear we are so stupid sometimes. Us women, we just want to save the world. And in reality, you can't save people who don't want to save themselves. So I found out that he was still using behind my back. And this one day, I don't know what came over me, but I was just done. I was done fighting. I was done worrying. I was done being sad. I was done thinking about Matt. I was done thinking about kids. I was just freaking done. And he came home loaded. I mean, just loaded out of his mind. And I was like, all right, if I'm going to be able to do this, this is going to be my opportunity. And so I just decided that day, that's it. I want to get high. I want to know what this feels like. I want to know why you love it so much. And I did. And let me tell you what, it opened a floodgate. It opened a floodgate that was so fast and so strong that I was helpless. Now, I want to point out something I forgot to mention. Right before this happened, one night I got home from work and I was sitting in the living room and this person was also home. And my mom had said, I think this person's back on the stuff. And I tried to ignore it and I tried to be in denial. Well, I'm in the living room, I'm eating a bowl of cereal and I hear this huge thud. And go to the bathroom where I heard the thud come from, and it turns out that this person is literally ODing in my mother's bathroom. So I call 911. I am beside myself. I mean, if you've ever seen somebody almost die, it is the most surreal, creepy, scary feeling ever. Well, he was on parole when this happened, and so this was a parole violation, which meant that he had to go back to prison and finish out the rest of his sentence. And so a month after I start doing heroin, he gets shipped off to prison, and now I'm left alone with a really bad heroin problem. And so for months and months and months, I was living a double life, literally. I was a hairstylist and a daughter and a sister and all of that. And then on the other side, I was an out of control junkie, like full blown junkie. I was doing anything and everything I could to feed my habit. I did not care what I needed to do to feed my habit. And when you live that life, you are forced into situations where bad things happen to you. Very bad things happen to you. And I suffered so much trauma in that time. And I was alone. And it was just getting so bad at the end. It was getting so bad because my problem was so out of control and everything was falling apart. You know, it was like everybody was figuring out what was going on. They knew something was going on, but they just didn't know what. Well, towards the end, of course, Matt tries to pop back into my life and get back together with me. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, you don't want no parts of this. Like, this is nothing compared to what we went through together before. And I just wanted to spare him, you know, all that. Well, it worked for a little bit, but, you know, Matt is very persistent. And when you're meant to be, you're meant to be. And so he wouldn't let up. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm going to be a wife, a stepmom, a hairstylist on one hand, and I'm just going to be this raging, full-blown psychotic junkie on the other hand. Like, I had a plan. Like, I was going to have 2 cell phones. Like, yeah, so Matt and I got married on October 25th, 2013. And on November 5th is when everything imploded. So during this time, I was a wife, I was a mom, I was doing the thing. But Matt was suspicious. He knew something was going on. He knew I wasn't cheating on him, but he knew something was going on. And so I kept the facade up a little bit. And one day, everything just imploded. And the whole secret, everything was just let out of the bag. And my family found out that I was on heroin, and it was just chaos. I remember Matt was there. I had taken a bunch of money out of our bank account when I showed up at my mom's house. He took the money, my bank card, my phone. It was crazy. Me and my sister started fighting, physically fighting. I had gotten high before I went, and so I was throwing up because I was high. We were fighting. It was just literal chaos. And my mom said, you have to go. Like, you cannot be here. Like, you cannot be here. And so I grabbed I just grabbed some random clothes. Like, I didn't take anything else. I didn't take a toothbrush. I just grabbed just like the most random stupid shit. Crap. My bad. And so, yeah, I get in my car and I am living in my car. So I devised a plan, and my plan was I was going to go to my work, and I was going to clean out the safe, I was going to clean out the drawer, and I was going to disappear into Cleveland, Ohio, and just never be heard from again. I had given up. My family didn't want me. I had this terrible drug problem, and so I was just going to go to the streets. So I get to my work, and God works in very mysterious ways. And when I got inside, I immediately felt just heavy. Like, so heavy. I felt heavy. I felt tired. Just a really weird feeling. And I just had this overwhelming urge to talk to Matt. But I didn't have a phone. And so I just had the shop phone, and you could only make local phone calls. And the only person's phone number that I had memorized was my grandmother's. And I called her, and I told her where I was, and I gave her the phone number, and I told Matt to call, and he called, and I just was completely honest about everything. And he said, "Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you." And so he picked me up, and I went to detox. And I went to detox for 5 days. And, that last day comes, and I am excited. I have this new outlook on life, and I'm all cleaned up now, and I'm married to a great guy, and life is going to be amazing. Yeah, so what they didn't tell me was that opiate detox can be anywhere from 8 to 14 days. And so when I woke up that very next day, the 6th day, I was right back into withdrawal all over again. And I was literally like in the height of the withdrawal. And I had no medication. None. And I had made an appointment. I was going to get on Suboxone, and I was going to do mat recovery. And again, I didn't know at the time. God intervened. And so I ended up going cold turkey. I did smoke weed. I'm not going to lie to anybody. I did smoke hella weed during that time. That was the only thing that kept me from literally losing my freaking mind. Not only is heroin withdrawal physical, but it is mental as well. You have the worst thoughts. I mean, you literally feel like you cannot live any longer unless you get that fix. I mean, your bones, your joints, every crack, every crevice, every pore is screaming for heroin. But I made it. And it took me 11 days. And like that 12th, 13th day, reality just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I realized, everything that happened. Well, I didn't really realize, I just realized my situation, the severity of it all. I was married. I had a stepson. My life was in shambles. I didn't have a job. Um, there was just so much. And it all just came crashing down on me. It was so overwhelming. And I just freaked. And I just wanted to be alone. I did not want to be with anybody. I completely broke Matt's heart. And I just told him we cannot be together. I don't want this. And, he tried to tell me that the people at the detox place said this would happen, that this was normal, don't give up, blah, blah, blah. But I was just such a shell of a human being. There was no way that I could be in a relationship and give that relationship what it needed because I didn't even know who I was. And I had to accept everything and I had to start over. And I couldn't face him because it was so hard to look at him and know what I had done and all the lies and everything. It was just, so we broke up. And of course, I reverted back to my old ways and immediately started dating. I started dating this guy who turns out to be a complete and utter psycho. I know, shocker. I can really pick him. But this guy was really bad. And I ended up just literally, I had to just go ghost on him basically because he was just a psycho. And so I started dating this other guy that I actually went to high school with. And he kind of, same thing, ugly duckling phase, whatever. And so we kind of had that, in common. But it became very apparent to me very quickly that we were very different when it came to like our views and our moral compass. One day we were actually out shoe shopping and I had an epiphany. And he had made some comments that really did not sit well with me. And it just occurred to me right there in Akron, Ohio at Shoe Depot that this guy is a piece of crap and everything that I have ever wanted is in my husband. And so I just was like, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. Don't call me, I'll call you. And I had a moment where I had a moment of hopelessness. And I had an opportunity to get high. And this was around Christmas time, right after Christmas time. I got a gift card for Kohl's for Christmas. And I had no car. So I really couldn't use a gift card. And I had an opportunity to trade this gift card for some dope. Now, it's important to note that this was a $50 gift card, and I got $20 worth of dope. And at the time, I am staying with my sister and her father, because we don't have the same dad, because I had nowhere else to go. And so, get the dope, and my sister is in the medical field, and she was giving herself B12 shots. And so, I found a rig which isn't even the right size or anything for what I needed. But when you're an addict, you make it work. And so I'm in my sister's bathroom and I'm afraid because I don't want to OD and I don't want my sister to find me OD'd. And so get the dope, I break it in half and get it all fixed up and nothing happens. And I'm pissed. Got ripped off. Just my luck. And so, in my addict mind, I'm like, well, if it is dope, I'm not going to waste any of it. So I'm going to do the rest of it. And so I did. What I didn't realize was that this was a creeper dope. And if you don't know what that means, it means it doesn't hit you right away. You do it, you think you got some junk, and then a couple minutes later, kabam, you are zonked. And so what happened? I OD'd. And I remember in my mind, it happened so fast. But before this, I was so worried about ODing and my sister finding me. I remember that being on my mind heavy. And so I do it. It happens black. Literally nothing but blackness. And I mean the kind of black that you cannot even see in front of your hand. You cannot see your hand in front of your face. It is so black. And then I see the most beautiful gold shimmery light. And it's literally coming from the window in my sister's bathroom. But I literally just peek open a little and see this. And then I could just feel myself being lifted off the ground. And now I'm headfirst in the toilet and I'm just vomiting. And then next thing I remember, somebody has their arm around me, walking me down the steps to my bedroom. I go from my sister's bathroom, down a flight of stairs, across the hall to my bedroom. I literally fall into bed in my clothes. I wake up 24 hours later. I slept for 20. I woke up that next morning, literally like, and I look around. I am here. I'm here. I am not dead. I'm in the clothes I was wearing yesterday. And I really didn't die. And then I'm like, what did it happen? And so then I remembered that I had somehow stuffed the stuff away, the package, the rig, everything. Found it in this old, like, carry-on bag. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I overdosed on heroin yesterday and I didn't die. And I just immediately cried. And I told God, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. And if you can help me get my family back, I promise that I will spend the rest of my life telling everybody how wonderful you are and how kind. Our God is so kind and He is so merciful and He loves us so much. And you know what I didn't realize is that, when bad things happen to you, you have a choice. You can run to the light or you can run to the dark. And, when that person came back into my life after me and Matt broke up and I was infertile, and that was my choice. That was what are you going to choose? God gives us free will and He is never going to intervene where He's not welcome. And I made it very clear to God that I wanted Him nowhere near me or my life. But Jesus had a bigger plan for me. And so He was like, you ain't dying today, honey. You got things to do, baby. So here I am. And it's been 10 years, over 10 years. It'll be 11 years, January 16th, since I overdosed. And if you would have told me that I would have got my family back, my career back, that I would be living by the beach, I would have never believed you. But with God, anything is possible. And if you don't know God or you're curious, I highly encourage you to invite Him into your heart. Invite Him into your life. I used to think that God forgot about me. I used to think that God punished me for bad things that I did. And that's just not the case. You know, when you start living for God, that's when things really start to happen. You know, we want our cake and we want to eat it too. We want to live in sin and we also want to be saved. But I have blabbed on for a very long time. And I almost did not make this video because I had notes prepared and I lost them. But I've been putting this off for so long, and God has been putting this on my heart. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to wing it. And whatever happens, happens. And so if you're still here, thank you so, so much. And I hope God blesses you. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week. And be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. I love you. But more importantly, Jesus loves you. Yeah, so what they didn't tell me was that opiate detox can be anywhere from 8 to 14 days.